Greetings one and all on the channel. So this is inspired by a question I got this morning, and it was all about knobs and MIDI control of knobs, specifically analog knobs. Norman, you doing, bud? I'm a bit confused as to your question, and this is actually something that I'm really interested in, so I'm just going to make an attempt to do a thorough video going through. We're going to talk about all kinds of different knobs. So your question was, how can you use MIDI to work with analog pedals and to control specifically analog potentiometers? And the answer, simple one, is you can't. The truth is you can, but here's the thing. The broker. This came in yesterday. I've been super interested in analog pedals, and the difference with knobs and potentiometers, stuff that's inside under here that goes down into a shaft, which goes into a thing that is changing voltages, which is part of the analog circuit. So you can activate two different drives on this thing. The black ones are one circuit, the silver ones are another circuit, and changes in voltage here affect the way that the circuit is working directly. Typical analog pedal. Now, there is no digital anything in there, and the big difference that I wanted to make clear to you between an analog pedal and a digital pedal is that these things are, I believe, called Rotary Encoders. I have to think about these things as they're coming along, and there's different kinds. These have a start and a stop value. You know, you'd be used to the plethora, which goes from 0 to 10. In MIDI terms, that would be 0 to 127. 12 o'clock here, or 5, would be 127 divided by 2, halfway there. 63, 64, 65, around that range. There's a big difference here between an analog pedal and a rotary encoder. Is what this is doing is it's the same thing. There's a change in potential energy, but that's being then digitized, encoded into MIDI or some other sort of similar system, and changes to this can then be mapped to anything. So that's 106, 107, 108 in terms of MIDI. And to save, the second part of your question was, how can you save a preset? Now, typically an analog setup doesn't have a preset. In the digital sense, if we're talking rotary encoders, what tends to happen is you need to have some sort of a management system. That can be an app, that can be, you know, like the tone print sources that are used for this, or if you're using an Iridium, look at this one. Velcro. The Iridium here, these are all digital encoders, digital switches. There's nothing in here that's actually going into a circuit directly. It's all being mapped into something digital and swinging this from 0 to 127. They all have CCs. Those can actually transmit stuff out, which is a massive thing of interest to us, because out of their MIDI port here, you have bidirectional MIDI, and that can go back to a MIDI control device. Like Peter Barabash has an app where you can swing these, and you'll see on your phone little bars set up, and that can be used to set up a preset. You know, very similar to a Helix, very similar to the TC Electronic ones, only this did not come with any sort of management system. Peter invented one for it. Wicked stuff. To save this, which is, you know, really my area of interest, I'm interested in the physical aspects of this and the control system, since what I used to do, control systems, so I dig that. Peter's app is the thing that's storing it. So basically you're sending a number and a position from 0 to 127, storing it in a table, linking all of these together, and converting that into a preset. So to do this, a whole bunch of CCs get saved into a table, like a list of do this, do this, do this, do this, and that's converted into a program change. That's how it works under the hood. So basically, once you've saved that by hitting the Fave button or using another Midi CC, all that table of data coming off this thing gets stored in an app. Hit that, it sends a command. All those things are stored internally in here, up to 300. Boom, and you've got your amp setting, which is cool, mainly because what the Iridium does is it's physically limited by the number of switches. So you can choose 3 amps, and of those 3 amps you can choose 3 cabs. The reality is quite different in that, yes, you've got 3 amps, but you've got 9 cabs, and with Midi you can go over and above and beyond that. Maybe that's answering your question. Where all this gets really interesting, you know, if you're going from analog pedals with chicken heads on it and all that, in order to control these, it's possible. But what you'd have to do is put a motor here to spin that, to actuate that. And there are control switches that do that. Mission Engineering make one, very expensive. They make a FRFR system which has a motorized rotary encoder on it which spins. So that little line there actually physically moves around because it's got motors set up inside it. If you wanted to do this on this one, you'd have to set up some sort of motor externally on this, and the guys at that pedal show, Gig Rig guys, they built a prototype to do that, and it never really went anywhere. So when I say, no, you can't do it, well, yeah, you can do it, but it would involve a lot of expensive trickery-dickery stuff, and maybe that's why it didn't go anywhere. It's possible. It is possible. But in terms of other systems that do cool things, let me introduce to you the Jet Pedals lamp. And the main reason I got this is because this is an all analog pedal with a digital brain. And it's very different from anything else out there. Your boy Junior over at Jet Pedals, Jet is Junior, Thompson, Edward or something is his middle name. He built this thing with these knobs. And what these knobs do is that position is sent to a little microprocessor, which then goes to an array inside this of analog stuff. So your analog signal's coming in, your analog signal's going out, your MIDI goes in, and instead of taking the numbers from this 0 to 127, it's only got like 0 to 8. So this is actually 8 different positions on there, which is going to another network. So you've got, I don't know, 8 by 8. The numbers aren't important. The concept is with this thing, you have a whole array of different pedals in there, different circuits with fixed levels. So instead of being able to turn up the volume, you're kind of jumping from one circuit to another circuit to another circuit. Another great example of this, which I don't have, would be the JHS Rat Pack. Brand new pedal that came out with like 10 rats in it, and that uses the same idea, a microcontroller which is changing the circuitry. So this is changing circuitry inside here and giving you different gain stages fixed. But the very fact that, for your other part of the question, control systems, is this: you can dial in these knobs here, send a MIDI CC to this thing, and it will go out and capture the position of those knobs, save that into a program change, and then you can send program changes to it, and that's how that works. Hope that's clear. You kind of have to see it, but this to me is one of the most interesting pedals that's been made in the last year. It's basically a Strouder switch. It's sort of like dialing in an old rotary phone, which goes there, and you have a head that's going up and connecting one telephone line to another. Ancient technology. Some of the first switches that were out there, when you used to dial it, would go tut, da-da-da, da-da-da-da. That's how that's working, ish. Fabulous thing. So, kind of an all over the place answer to this. Let's refine your question. I hope I'm not leading you all over the place, but in terms of other systems that do this kind of thing, Strymon is now pretty much the only one which is doing dual directional Midi, I think, where you can set this up and dial in, but they don't have a control system. Source Audio, the guys who make the EQ2, which I dig, I'm not going to drag that out, they have a completely different system with massive control systems and a hub in the middle, the Source Audio hub, which connects over TRRS, so dual direction, dual cables, into all of their pedals. And the cool thing here is you could pick up Source Audio pedals, 1, 2, 3. So those are Source Audio pedals. Connect them all into a hub, move those dials around, and then send a message to that hub. The hub then talks to all of these and says, hey, what are you guys doing? It takes note of where all those switches are, and it saves that to a PC. When you then send back a message to the hub and say, give me that setup, everything you've dialed in right here comes back. Very cool. All of this stuff is a bit complex, so of all those little snippets of answers, tell me which direction you want to go in, because for me, I really dig this stuff. I really dig these pedals, really looking at the whole analog thing and the whole digital thing, and trying to work out really what happens when you start sticking analog pedals together. You get gain staging, you get very interesting behaviors. If that's mapped into a digital domain, Start does that, maintains it, but you're going through analog and digital conversions in every step. Does it really make a difference? Theoretically, yes. Everybody has Strymon pedals all over the place and loves them. I don't know. The same thing with modelers, except with modelers, you've got one input, one output. If you're not going through different loops, that's got 5 pedals, and all of those 5 pedals are all in the digital domain, and the amount of latency you get from one end to the other, potentially better than going through 5 of these. Maybe, maybe not. I really don't know. Oh boy, Sasha Dux wrote a really interesting article on it. It's something that I've been experimenting with all year. Haven't really drawn any conclusions to it as of yet. Me being a Helix guy, I take a Variax and go digitally into that, and that can go digitally all the way out to a speaker, and that should be the lowest latency across the whole thing. Is it? I don't know. Does it make a difference? I don't know. But what's really cool is with a digital end-to-end system, you have a command structure set up over it, hxedit, which tracks all that stuff. And none of that's MIDI, it's all whatever proprietary system Helix is using. Is it really important to know that? Probably not, but where are the advantages and disadvantages of going digital to digital end to end, of using analog stuff in the middle, of making hybrid rigs, which is what I'm into, of splitting a rig into a wet-dry thing, where maybe your dry side is analog and your wet side is digital, because delays are, for the most part, digital. All super interesting questions. All loads of things that I'm looking at. So let me know what direction you're going into, as to where you go to look up all this stuff. That pedal show all over YouTube. You could go, really deep into engineering classes and stuff like that. But for the most part, we just use the communities and chat about it. So hopefully this is useful to you, and we'll generate more chats and more useful chat in the various groups. Have a great weekend.